Hello, and welcome back to the JRB podcast with myself, Ryan Levine, joined here by Jeff Jones and Bohdan Temnick.
What's up?
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about Bohdan's experience at Worlds, and then,
Very briefly, not
yeah,
too
very
in depth.
briefly. I don't think he really wants to do that much. But, we will do our due diligence, and then I guess we'll talk about my regional from last week. Because it was, Duelist Nexus and stuff, and I got to play with some of the newer cards. But yeah, let's just start with Bohdan, I guess. I know you didn't do as well as you wanted, and you don't really want to dwell on it, but like, how was the experience? Like, I know this is not.
It was fun. It was fine. There was some things that I did voice my concerns to Konami people about, and they were very receptive, which was
Mhm.
good. Stuff relating to like Master Duel, and then obviously, there's like the other TCG issues. So it's a really good platform, like if you would like to just talk to Konami people you wouldn't normally talk to, and it's like you're all in the same place, you're all there for the same reason. It's pretty cool. And obviously you meet new people. It's always nice. So met a lot of cool people. We
Who
got
was
to
the
be in Japan.
coolest person you met? You're like, this guy's awesome.
Uh, I mean, our Master Duel teammate, who we hadn't met, like he was really cool. Like his dude just speaks, Japanese. Very very low key. Doesn't want to be in the social, in like the stratosphere of public eye for Yu-Gi-Oh. But he's pretty good. So I'm very disappointed that we failed him sadly. But no, he was chill. Trying to think. I guess the Brazilians are really cool. I don't believe I had a chance to meet Raphael beforehand, but there was like during COVID, like he was a Dragon Duelist same year as Ryan. You know what I mean? It's like, oh hey, like this kid's all grown up, and like everyone's just hanging out and chilling. It's like, oh, you know what, you guys are all right. That was pretty neat. And I guess I was hanging out with like Santoli as well. Like that's another cool guy. Sort of just popped up in the last like 2-ish years as well. Didn't really get to hang out with him beforehand. I would say everyone. No one was unpleasant. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like if you're unpleasant at Worlds, you really just alienate yourself. But everyone was just really, really good atmosphere. Everyone was having a good time, so it was good. Yeah, and
I know
that's
that
my
we talked like before the event. We talked briefly about the format of
Mm.
Master Duel and the deck building, and obviously you couldn't really give anything away
Mm.
before the event. So I guess I'll just run through a couple things. What were so for those of you that don't remember, for the Master Duel deck building, your team all had to create decks, and they each team member had to create decks, and they couldn't share cards. And then you were
Mm.
allowed to choose 3 cards that were exempt from this rule that you could put in as many decks as you wanted across your team. What were the 3 cards they ended up choosing?
We did Ash, Maxi, and Gamma because the third card didn't feel like it would fit in a lot of the decks that we did pick. So we tested with Josh. So it's really funny. Like it seems like every time, um, maybe it's not every time. It's been 2 times. But Ryan, when you and I tested for Worlds 2018, we both had the polar opposite results,
Yeah.
which I think is funny when you look at this year as well. We tested with Josh, Quantal, and Emery, and same thing, just soul opposite results. And obviously there's other factors as well. Like it's pods, there's bracketing, there's a bunch of other, it you might have like a softer pod compared to like one pod. And I do think our pod was probably the hardest, pod in the tournament. Not to take away from, the players in the other side, like they're all very good as well. But, round one, I'm playing my first game against Jesse, So like it's kind of
But
insane to
you
think
whooped
about.
Jesse's ass.
I did, and then we lost
Ooh.
the
You
other
stole
ones.
his
Yeah, it
tops.
didn't matter. Yep. But no, like I think the third card was probably a little more inconsequential than people would give it credit for. There wasn't a good enough card to go into every deck. So let's look at it. So we had the same lineup as the winning lineup, but we shifted some decks around. So I played Tyr and Sky Striker. The reason being that we assume that the tier deck really shouldn't swap outside of matchups where we know someone's going to queue a hate deck. And after round one, because you were able to spectate all players after round one, a lot of the information is just out there. We were surprised, like before, I think top four or even the finals that even happened, someone had published all the deck lists through like who knows? It was Decade, so who knows what he did? That dude is just banned from Konami, so he can do whatever he wants, I suppose, without consequence if you really think about it. But yeah, so like all the information was just out there. So Sky Striker would go in against like the barrier statue, like runic stun strategies. We have a lot of removal, and it just doesn't really play into the trends that they're trying to queue into tier. And then we had a variation on the winning lineup where they had Labyrinth and Exo from their player C, who was Emery, and we had Labyrinth and Dragon Link. So we had each player would have an anti-tier deck and then just a good generic deck. So when you don't have any information, you would queue the deck that isn't going into tier. Because statistically there's only one tier deck unless someone's a sicko and has this like really weird like share card like Merly Piccolo something, like that would be very funny. And then yeah, like our third player had the Naturia Runic and Exo. So that was the variation. So then we just swapped the one deck. And we felt like Gamma was a little bit more productive, given someone could just bring a combo deck like Adamancipator, and that was something we considered. Your like secondary deck could just be an ignorant deck, and then you just have an anti-tier deck. You win the coin flip, you do your Adamancipator end board, and
So
on
I
Naturia
ask you,
Beast,
I'm gonna ask you a
Sparkion.
question real quick while
Yeah.
I think about it. So, if you could do it over, do you think that Gamma was the correct choice for you?
I think we would have just not played Lab at all. That was the biggest issue. The Lab player had the worst record in the tournament, and that was just like solely by design of like I think we overvalued how good Labyrinth actually was. And it just wasn't. So I honestly would have rather any other deck. Maybe like a combo deck would have been more appropriate. So I don't know if you guys saw, but the Japanese team, the rank one global, not just in Japan region, he played a punk deck and he got maxied and decked his opponent out, which we
Mm.
thought
I
was
did
very
not see
funny.
that.
So
I
the
did see that, and I
Emancipator
was
deck,
like,
yeah.
this was crazy.
Yeah, the
Mm.
Emancipator deck can also do that. So that was like what we were like, oh, well, we can play Emancipator in like one of these spots. But I think we overvalued Lab, and Lab it was just unplayable. I think for
Mm.
this tournament, yeah. So I
I
think
find that to
that's
be
like
really
maybe the big
interesting
thing.
that lab, because I mean, without looking into it too much, I thought lab would be one of the stronger decks you could choose, especially when you can't share cards. So
Mm.
Because it
I
seems the
think
um,
most
it's
like
just
unique. Yeah.
yeah. So like the Lab deck itself, I think is just like you need to have a bunch of other like cards to sort of go along with it. I think Ryan played Lab with like heavier traps, and
mhm.
that maybe would have made a little more sense if we're never putting Lab into tier. We should have had like more high value trap cards to just set alongside like your lovelies, your ladies, just like big monsters. Like obviously Drain, Gozen, etc. They're at one. Um, but like Judgment and Strike are probably good enough into non-tier decks. But the issue being is like you don't know if your opponent's gonna throw like combo into you. And it just felt like we wanted to be a little more well-rounded when we knew we weren't queuing into tier. We just wanted a deck that was just like strong enough into control, which we assumed every other deck was if it wasn't tier. And we were right for the most part. Like the only combo deck that was actually brought was again, the OCG player who was playing the punk deck. So yeah, I think in hindsight there might have been a little bit more in terms of for reflection, but I think everyone would have done the same thing if they had hindsight behind them. I know Josh talked about he's like maybe we should have done this and this, and I'm like that's reasonable, and like even Jesse said it as well. It's like Jesse wasn't a fan of like the winning tier deck, and I'm like it's understandable, like because our lists were like kind of close, like myself and Quantal, and then Jesse's deck was just completely different. But I think some of the concepts we definitely could have taken from that and maybe adapted. But it's like Ray's Sword Soul deck didn't have like desires in it. You know, it's like little confusing things that I think maybe we can adjust as we go along. But you know, I think maybe the one thing I would have changed was hmm, my downfall was like APM. I was pretty like I got into some more complex game states than I would like. And the timer was the same as a normal in-game timer, so it wasn't ideal. Because if anyone's played Master Duel, you know that like 300 seconds usually isn't enough in like a very like complicated game state. You need to be able to do everything very quickly. And I am not a zoomer. I play Master Duel on my phone generally, and I figured that one out. Like I have high APM on my phone for whatever reason, which I think is hilarious. But you put a mouse in front of me and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh my god, like the setup
Mhm.
doesn't feel right. You know, like if I'm playing on my computer at home with my mouse, like I'm adjusted, I'm a little more comfortable and I can, do little like things in terms of like knowing, how to move my mouse appropriately. But we're sort of just sitting there and like the setup wasn't bad, but it didn't feel as fluid and it definitely showed. My second round was, lackluster in terms of just like APM. I get max seed. I sit there, I hit the tank for like a little bit, and then I'm just like, I'll dwell a Zeus. My opponent doesn't kill me, and then like on my crackback turn, I can kill my opponent, and I just can't in a reasonable amount of time, like trying to figure out how to win the game there. But I think it's like the same as a normal 3v3, like where we're like talking about certain plays and stuff like that as well, and like that just eats the clock, and I think that's the biggest problem. So like what I tell a lot of people, our experience came down to was like um all the teams made mistakes that were like game costing, which is pretty relevant, given that it's a first to five, best of nine. Um, but those mistakes didn't pair with them getting unlucky generally. Whereas our like if I made a mistake, so mine let's say like the round where like I essentially time out. I end my turn on 0 seconds and like we're playing on the opponent's turn and my end board is lackluster, right? My teammate let's say like player C, just oh sorry, player B, he just has a very abysmal game against like tier not tier like Sprite or something. So he loses because of that. I lose because of this, and then player A wins, right? So it's like, oh, we 1-2'd it, but it should have been a 2-1. It's like okay. Whereas like the other team is like, well, they 2-1'd it, even with the misplay, and they still have a redemption round on like the third one, and it's just sort of compounding, and that was like the trend. It's like one of us would make a mistake, one of us would get unlucky, and it would just like sort of pile on. Because like I think I had a pretty good run, in like not tier mirror matches, but like against players that are like I played against the 2019 world champ like round three game one, and like I ashed him, he paused. I ashed him, he paused consecutive turns, and I was like, oh cool, like that's neat. We probably beat their strongest player, like, and then it just didn't matter because next game I maxi my opponent, he ashes me, ends on full sprite board, and my hand is like 5 engine cards. You know what I mean? Like it just comes in strides. So I think the format does need to be reevaluated, not like from a Yu-Gi-Oh perspective, maybe from like a gameplay, organized play perspective. So I think the timer should probably be a little bit longer. I think something we need to look at for like the shared cards and maybe more games played, because the one thing they need to remember as well is like we finished quite early, for Master Duel especially, because you're not playing that many games. And realistically, it's like why wouldn't you just want to play more games, right? Like surely it's just free content for you. You can have all the games on like the YouTube channel. You can make it a thing. You have the commentators. You have all of this stuff. More games played is more content for them. So I don't understand why they didn't want to have
I mean, realistically, they
more.
just add a best of three option in a Master Rule the next year.
I will see. I didn't actually like ask anyone about that because I also I genuinely think that only Japan knows. And when I'm asking, people from like Konami USA Digital Division or Konami EU, it's like, oh, you you do not know. It is fine. But yeah, I think they're doing a good job. I think Master Duel is definitely like the logical progression for Yu-Gi-Oh. but I think there's still a lot of things that need to be fixed. But when you only have one event a year that you have to care about for Master Duel, like realistically, it's easy for them to have to, like they'll neglect something. And it's like, well, now you have a whole year to fix it. And it's like, well, what if you neglect something else? And then, it'll be like, well, maybe 5 years from now, Master Duel Worlds will be completely perfect. But until then, who knows? Maybe next year it's completely perfect in terms of tournament structure and gameplay. But yeah, it was fun otherwise.
Yeah,
I
that's
also
fair
want to
enough.
point out that before this, Bohdan said, "I don't really want to talk about my experience too much," and then went on the
No, because
longest.
no, dude. So when you asked me, literally all of yesterday, I saw a bunch of my like I got back last week and I saw a bunch of my friends and they're like, oh, so what happened? Like, how was it? Like, what happened? Like,
You're
oh,
just
like
over
so that's
talking
it.
about it.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my god. So like I at least I got it out there into the ether. Like I'm not screaming into the abyss, but it's like
Yeah.
yeah, dude, like. Because everyone else had like all their other concerns. They're like, "Oh, you guys are playing in like an office building," and I was like, "Nah, dude. Like, I was very like, if we were playing with people walking around, I would have probably just like exploded. Like that. There's so much pressure when you're sitting in those. It's like I'm sitting
Well,
there
I don't think
shaking,
people would be
clicking a
walking around.
mouse.
I feel like people would have to be seated. Like
No, but
normal.
you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
just having those extra eyes on you, I feel like it's so intimidating. And I value it from a player perspective, but I can see where the concern comes from like a spectator perspective, right? But like there's very I feel like the other thing that people sort of neglect is like there's very few things that tend to just be for the player in like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And I would rather the World Championship be the one thing that I believe is solely for the player. Like, they look after you quite well, and you're in this nice quiet room with like the other competitors. There's no outside sounds, nothing, like no sensory overload, when you're in like this giant arena. Like I was also at Pokemon Worlds and I just thought to myself, like this is just a YCS. Like I don't care what anyone says. Like this feels like a YCS, and I know a lot of people who like after a round they need to just leave the area to take a break because it's so like mentally draining hearing all of this stuff like just going at you. You know what I mean? You sort of have to zone out when you play. And that's like different for paper Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's sort of what separates certain people from others, like in terms of like the competitive aspect. You sit there, you play, and you have to zone everything else around you out. So like eliminating that factor for the world championships is it's pretty good. But again, like maybe that's a skill thing. Like who knows? Maybe it's better that you make it sort of like a YCS for worlds where there's so many people there, you're the focus of attention, and maybe you just like strive if you are the person that can zone that out. But yeah,
I mean,
I don't know.
we were
Different
gonna
topic
try
for
that, right?
discussion.
Like before in
Sorry.
2020, Worlds was scheduled to have a YCS in the Worlds venue, remember? But it didn't
I think
obviously end up happening.
Japan focuses it a little differently, whereas like Europe and North America tend to make it like more of a public spectacle, which is
Yeah.
fine. Like I think either or is completely reasonable from Konami's side. But obviously, like the people from the outside are always gonna complain that they're not doing something when they should be doing
Oh,
it.
of course,
And I
absolutely.
feel like that's just every game. You know what I mean? Like, well, did we see Pokemon not get demonized over the Worlds weekend? No, we did about
Oh
a
yeah,
bunch of silly stuff. And it's
yeah.
like you can't please anyone, but
I
I'm
mean, it
sure
was
every
less about
spectator.
the actual event and the
Yeah, I
more
no
it was
no for
something else.
sure for
But
sure.
yes.
I
No,
also
I
think
I
that got
agree with that.
overblown for the record. Like a lot of. I
Yo,
also
no,
think there was a
I think
lot
it's
of
overblown
misinformation.
also.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't have any idea what we're talking about, there was a whole thing on Twitter where like Pokemon Worlds used a more thorough hack check than they have in the past. For whatever reason, they introduced this at the World Championship, and the people were acting like 1,000 people got DQ'd when it was actually maybe like 10 or 20. Like it wasn't that many from what I actually understand. It wasn't that many people. And it just got super, super overblown. And this whole discourse about how like because the format changed in Pokemon and you could use Pokemon from older games. Like, it was actually morally correct to hack them instead of buying Pokemon Sword. And it's like, what is happening? Like, and I feel like from like a player perspective, if I was like competing at Worlds and like, I think it's crazy. I don't know who won Pokemon Worlds this year because I feel like it was so drowned out by people complaining. Most of the people who are complaining don't even play Pokemon, right? And like, I
Yeah,
think that's like the craziest
that's
part,
how I
right?
felt about like that's how I felt about the Yu-Gi-Oh one, where it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
but like, yeah, dude, sure, but it maybe it's just a different perspective for me because as from the competitive perspective, it feels way different. Whereas like for Pokemon itself, if people aren't there, I saw everyone having a good time. By the way, Pokemon definitely does a crazy good job. But like again, they're doing it more for like, oh, it's Pokemon Worlds in Yokohama, but let's eliminate the fact that it's anything related to any of like the games happening. Think of this more as like you know how they do like the Pokemon Go Fest and stuff like that, except like on like a larger scale. It's like I leave the train station in Yokohama and there's screens and everything, and we go to like the mall connected to the convention center, and there's just like Pokemon stuck on stuff, and you can go to like different train stations in Japan and stamp a bunch of like Pokemon related stuff.
yeah.
So it
There's a
was
guy
I feel
dressed as
like
a
it was
Team Rocket grunt. And he robs you in the subway. You know the deal.
yeah, that
It's
too.
atmospheric.
But yeah, no, like it's just more of a you know, if you told me any of that was for like the TCG or the video game or anything else, I don't think any of the stuff that they were doing could be related to that outside of sticking Pokemon cards on walls and stuff.
Yeah.
Like to me, it just felt like a celebration of Pokemon itself.
Yes.
And like,
Fair.
would it detract from who became the world champion? Potentially. I know who was the world champion because I was there and I vaguely followed TCG and stuff like that. But it's
Right,
like
like I
I
know
think
that. Yeah.
if you ask someone like on the street like, oh, like
Like
Pokemon World
me.
Champion, like, oh, who do you think is gonna win? Like they would just be like, oh, I'm going to get the free bag. You know what I mean? Like just silly stuff like that. And I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh is also maybe the same. Like for Worlds, like how many people are going and they're gonna be like, oh man, like I heard Poli wins. It's like no, there was a majority in the other room playing public events to get free sleeves, and they were buying stuff, and they're gonna get their promo anyway. Like there was an option to spectate and an option to not spectate. So like the way you should maybe look at stuff like this is like, all right, which one is more a celebration of the brand? And it's like, yeah, Pokemon did a way better job. But like Worlds itself, I think both of them are just like this, have the same issues. Well, maybe maybe in like different perspectives, but yeah, I don't know. I think Pokemon did a better job of promoting Pokemon itself, but it's less of the World Championship. It's more Pokemon the brand.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
like at the end
The
of
actual
I guess that's
event
more
So
is like less exclusive, which is
yeah.
understandable, I guess.
it's funny that you bring this up because it's something I kind of want to talk about because it's something that I learned about this weekend. So over the past couple days, I have learned a lot from the Pokemon community on Twitter and talking to people about the Pokemon game. And ironically enough, all three of us have been doing Pokemon related things this last week. um,
Yeah, actually, sort of unrelated to to any of this
yes.
discussion. Yes.
But I asked the question about competitive Pokemon, and uh, basically what I learned. So, for people who don't know about Pokemon, with their tournaments are $70 to enter, and all levels. So if you are a 10-year-old kid wanting to play in their like Dragon Duel basically version of their tournament, it's $70 to enter.
Well, you also
And
have to RNG to get a ticket half the time because they cap very quickly.
right, yes,
Yeah.
they do cap very, very quickly. But from my perspective, I was wondering if all these I wanted to know how the competitive stuff in Pokemon worked because in my head, if people are traveling and to all these events, paying $70 to enter, and on top of that, all the tournaments are selling out online because they cap them, that has to mean that people really care about the competitive nature of the tournament. And what people told me basically is no, that's not true. They just want to go to hang out with their friends and have fun. And I was like, that blew my mind because if you take a casual Yu-Gi-Oh player, a casual Yu-Gi-Oh player is not going to go to a YCS and spend travel pay money to travel to a YCS and pay $70 to enter. They will stick
Mm.
more close to home, right?
Well,
You'll
the
you'll
Pokemon events also have like other sort of like maybe not necessarily like the regionals, but like the ICs and stuff like that. They'll have, you know, they try and make it the $70 covers like you might get a playmat, you have this large trading area, you know, like there's like a bunch of other
right,
cool little
right.
things
So
going on. Yeah.
that's the thing is that people again they go not to be competitive, they go for like the
Mm.
experience.
Mm.
So basically then I became in the mindset of they aren't going to be competitive with Pokemon. They're basically it's like going to a convention, right?
Yeah.
It's like going to like Comic-Con or whatever, but for
Yeah,
Pokemon.
yeah. Well, but
Uh,
like that, it if we look at like the so like the Magic the Gathering had their GPs like the Grand Prix and stuff like that, or like all of the other like large events, and then they condensed it down, and now it's just you have Magic Fest with like a tournament inside of it, but it's more of again, you know, we're looking at like a celebration of the brand. You go there, there's artists,
right.
there's trading, there's you know cosplay, and like all of the other stuff, and like you'll have like you know a range of different formats that you can play, and I think it's sort of like the natural progression. And I'm surprised like YCSs don't do this, but if we do look back at the last few YCSs with like the voice actors and stuff, you know, like they had the panel. I think that's an interesting thing. Um, so like maybe that's something we can look towards in the future. You see YCS has become more of like, hey, like here's Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, here's more Yu-Gi-Oh related stuff. But then they would have to maybe accept, you know, YouTubers and content creators as people that could also be there for like signings and panels and stuff like that. And I don't think we're at that point yet. But sorry for cutting you off. I sort of lost my train of thought. But please continue.
No. I mean, yeah. I mean, I agree. We're kind of talking about how that Pokemon as for their events, while there is that competitive aspect there, it is more of a giant celebration of Pokemon as a brand,
Mm.
right? And I think that is something that I found I just didn't even think like was think of when I thought of all these people are just going to this to be competitive because that's what we see in Yu-Gi-Oh. That's only people go to YCSs and stuff for that competitive experience, not just for shits and giggles, right?
I mean it's probably a combination. But so the crazy one for Pokemon, I think you still need like a spectator pass for like the regionals and stuff, right? Is that a thing? I'm like 99% sure I remember reading something like
I
that.
don't know
Like,
about regionals, but I know Max and I went to the North American Intercontinental
mm,
Championship in 2022, and we bought spectator badges and hung out for the event there. But I'm not sure if that's the same for regionals.
mm.
So
Yeah, like I know that was like a weird thing where it was like you know YCS compared to some of these other events that you know they don't gatekeep. It's like well you can't just go there and you know try and get the benefit of everything else. So like I think maybe like if a YCS is offering additional cool things that you can do, then maybe you might also see stuff like a spectator pass, increased entry, and all the other, which is what we have seen, right? Like in Europe, you see increased entry. Like, how do we
so
feel about that?
so that is yeah a leeway to where we want to talk
Yeah.
about. We're talking about Pokemon's entry is $70. Their prize pool is way bigger. You get way more. The prize pool has not changed for Yu-Gi-Oh, at least in any
Mm.
significant way, and they increased the price of entry to around I think it's $45.
It's
Um,
like 40. It's like 44.99
So
euro
so
or
far
something.
that's Europe only though. So I don't
yes,
want to definitively say that NA like, you know, which and they also haven't said what what you get for that fee either, which that's actually my only
So
real issue
they
with
have
everything. I don't think
no
they've said
they
what you
have
get.
you get 10 booster packs.
yeah,
I don't
it's
think that's
it's
written
10 booster
anywhere.
packs.
I
No,
looked
no,
No,
and
no.
didn't find
It
it.
is 100% written on
yeah,
the thing.
you
Yeah.
increase
Hmm,
they just gave you an equal number of booster packs.
interesting.
Ryan,
Um,
the whole thing is outlined on their event page, which may I mention is probably nicer than the North American one, but that's neither here nor there. It is yeah, the 40 whatever 10 packs, and then it specifies like this is the equivalent of the MSRP of the packs, blah blah blah. You're essentially buying 10 packs to enter the YCS, which is apparently something to bypass some type of European law, or maybe North. I don't even know anymore. It's just people just say stuff, and I'm just like, you know what? That sounds good enough. Good for you.
I'm pretty sure it's just Konami policy, but like, because even at locals, you have to be given commensurate pricing when you enter, but how that works
I mean, yeah, for North America, sure.
is that
Europe it doesn't work that way.
Well,
no.
OTS packs are count, and they just give them to the store, so it all works out. But
yeah, yours free, ours are not. But yeah.
So something I do want to bring up on the topic of the entry fee is, well, I understand that people can be upset about the increase of price. I do think that an increase of price to an extent is okay. I went back and looked at, so for most of Yu-Gi-Oh, even I went back and looked, Yu-Gi-Oh YC or Shonen Jump started in 2005, 2006, and it has always
No, it
been
started like
$20.
04, remember? Anyway.
The very first one was 2005.
No, it was 2004. End of 2004. Continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So either way, if you check how much, oh no, Columbus. Columbus was my first event, and that was in 2005. It was the third Shonen Jump. That's why I had that in my head. But it's always been $20 basically, and if you take $20 from 2004, 2005, and translate it into 2023, it would be equal to about $35 now. So, I mean, with inflation and stuff, if they made a YCS $35 and didn't increase the prize pool, I mean, you could just look at inflation and say, okay, this is accurate over the past 20 years of Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever. But once you go beyond that, I think you need to start looking at something. I mean, I would pay $70 to enter a YCS if they increase the prize pool. I mean,
I'd pay $100. I don't like, but we're like the minority, right? Where it's like if the entry fee is like, obviously if it was like entry fee is 200 and you get the same pricing, for me, I would probably still pay the 200 because I'm already in too deep at that point, right? Like, what am I gonna do?
Well,
Not
don't
enter
say
the
that.
YCS?
Now they're
They
just gonna
got
do
me.
that. So thanks.
They got me. It's done. But no, like, I don't know, man. Like, how do you want them to increase the prize pool and like, you do it relative to like the entry fee as well? Like I think the participation pack stuff is bad. I would rather get less packs and then have everyone else be, like I would rather like top 32 get something extra because I feel like top 32 is just like disappointment now.
So I actually have been thinking about it a lot, and I truly think that is, in my opinion, the biggest disconnect in the current pricing. Is if you look at the FAQs, technically how the FAQs, well, how they used to be structured, and they sort of are, they've just changed it a little bit now, is it used to be that technically prizing is only given to top 16 of a YCS. And then there was a little asterisk if the entrants go over a certain number. And we saw in the past there were some Latin American YCSs that didn't reach that number, so it would cut to only top 16. And then it would say, if the event goes over X number of people, which I believe was like 512 or something like that. Basically, if you got a 10th round of Swiss, it would cut to top 32 instead of top 16. And then because the top cut was increased, then if you lost in top 32, you still got the top cut mat. Which, first of all, almost every event in that old system was still top 32. So like literally almost all of them. So this sort of like, haha, technically it's only top 32 if we get a big enough event, it wasn't entirely accurate because almost every event was top 32. In more recent years, I believe it changed in 2017, but it might have been a little later than that. I don't remember exactly. It was changed, I believe, so every YCS is top 32 no matter what, exception being a 3v3. The 3v3 is still 16. But every event is top 32. However, it's still in the FAQ lists 17 to 32 as just getting the top cut mat. And then if it cracks 2000 2048 players,
Right.
then it's top 64, and then and then 33rd to 64th also only get the entry mat. So now you have 2 tiers of top cut where you don't receive additional prizing. And I think that's where the biggest disconnect for me is now you can top the event, win in the first round of top cut, and then lose and still not get any additional prizing because the prizing structure never updated to keep in line with the entrance for these events. And I feel like and again, everyone will have their own ideas of what they should do or what they can do or whatever, but in my opinion, I think all of the prizing needs to be bumped down 1 tier. So by that I mean, I don't think the 24 pack should be the top 16 prizing. I think it should be the top 32 prizing. And then, you should maybe add something in the middle of that, because, and again, losing in top 32 and getting a box obviously feels awful anyway, but losing in top 32 and getting nothing feels worse. Right? Like, and I know, like, no one's going to be happy with the prizing because it does seem pretty inconsequential compared to other games, but I just feel like there needs to be something to fill that gap, right? The fact that you have to win 2 rounds of top cut before you get any additional prizing, I think is, in my opinion, what puts like the biggest sour taste in my mouth, is that you can literally win in top cut and still not get anything.
Yeah, you can go undefeated and then lose and then get spat on. Yeah.
Which like for the longest time, again, I don't want to dwell on this prizing thing. I just think like I would still prefer. I mean, sure, obviously everybody says, haha, we should just do cash prizing. And it's like there's so many logistics involved in why that isn't happening that let's not even get into that. But it's like I would just like there to be more cool things you can only get at a YCS. Like,
sure.
I wish there would be more stuff like the bag you get for getting first or second. And like, it's weird to me that exists and is only for first and second. And it's like, I just wish there'd be more things. Like, I don't know, like give top 32 like a YCS hoodie or something, like just something. I don't know. Like, it doesn't have to be anything insane. Just like,
here's a side tangent of something that I wish they would do more is when they made like the Rescue Rabbit plush and like you can't buy that thing. Why don't they make a plush of the YCS prize card and give it out?
That would be kind of cool.
I think that would be sick. Get a plush and another reverse dragon, and then it's just this little thing, I mean,
no, there's so like, how they give out those, like, I think we've been through this at length. They give out those coins, and there's coins that made by like this company in Europe. It's like Fanatics or something.
Yeah.
And they make all of the crazy stuff. Actually, I'll try and get the list up. But they have like a Millennium item box.
They're on the website, on the Yu-Gi-Oh like official store website. It used to be, I think, called like the Yu-Gi-Oh apparel website, and then now they started selling things other than just clothes. So they have more stuff. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. They have a bunch of like little collectible things, and they have these like, this is gonna sound like it's hate, but I swear it's not. They almost like the old Pokemon like Burger King gold cards. Like they have those for Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah,
but like I don't mean that. I don't mean that as in like I mean it as like they're kind of cool.
I have I'm gonna send the absolute crazy one in the chat, and you will see this. Do you remember for like the World Championships how they gave out like the tablet, and it was just like the tablet of lost memories that they put on the tin and all of that stuff? Yeah, so like this was a World Championship trophy, like a larger one, and it was like very, very high quality. I think there's like a video on Strictly Sealed, or one of like the YouTubers, like the collectors, and he bought one from one of the World Championship top 4 competitors in like 05 or something. This exactly this. Could you imagine, instead of I don't know what the price tag is in United States dollars, but it's 184 AUD, which probably converts to like 100 USD.
It's 115 roughly USD.
All right, so it's 115. Okay, cool. Like, imagine imagine this is given to top 8 and it is more exclusive and it is awesome. Like that would be
Yeah.
cool. That would be
Yeah.
something. It's like you know what I mean? Like, oh, you get a trophy for winning, but here's your top 8 like tablet of lost memories, and like now the pricing is just increased, and like all you had to do is do the same thing you did with the Rescue Rabbit thing. Like you're not gatekeeping it, but you're giving it out through like other channels. How many
Hmm.
people do you think are gonna spend 115 US dollars on a general release item like this?
Not very
Probably
many.
not that many.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's why it's like, why wouldn't you take cool things like this instead of giving them out, like instead of putting them on this website that people don't know about, by the way. Like
Yeah,
if
Yeah.
they don't promote it very
we
well
get
at
this
all.
offered by our distributor, so like I see this stuff and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh cool, like this would be neat. If it was, maybe given out as a prize instead. Like that would be very cool. Instead, it's just in a box and no one will buy it. Like just all
So
that happens. It's like
before I lose this train of thought, also, so to go what you're saying, I actually think the prizing for the championship last year was the
was
step
very
in the
I thought it was
direction
very good.
I wanted to
I
see.
thought
Yeah.
that was amazing.
Yes, it was something cool you can't get otherwise. I'm talking about the Crystal Blackluster Soldier card.
Uh-huh.
I was disappointed when the Crystal Dark Magician Girl for Duel Links was just like, how was it even? I don't even know how it was distributed. I think it was
It
just
was
like a
given to like
sweepstakes,
it
right?
was like a Twitter giveaway.
Yeah, it was like a Twitter
Yeah.
giveaway, and it's
stuff
like
like that.
that's just nothing. And it's like when they said, okay, we're gonna do more crystal cards, and they're gonna have the little like pedestal is gonna say Yu-Gi-Oh Championship on it, and it's gonna be the top 32 of the championships. I'm like, that is awesome, and that is what I want to see, moving forward. And it's like in a perfect world, top 32 of the event would get a crystal card of every YCS would get a crystal card, and it would be a different one every event. I'm sure that is extremely expensive and probably,
So
even more expensive than
so
just like
so
giving
I,
out
I
cash.
think
But
so what that's cool, and I think they could do that for like nationals or whatever, but
yeah,
I think that would be way easier and way less expensive because you can just mass print them yourself.
yeah,
That would be
yeah,
way easier. Would be just to do what every other fucking game does and create extended art cards that you give away to Top Cut or something like
hmm,
Sure.
that. And then you know what? Then when you because these things have tangible use outside of like these fucking coins. The coins are cool, but you can't do anything with them. They just sit in
yeah,
a box or sit on your
Yeah,
shelf. Same thing with the crystal.
everyone's been yelling about the coin thing, and they're just like, you don't even use coins in like the modern game of Yu-Gi-Oh. Like,
Yeah.
what?
you
Why
also, I
would
don't
you
think
use
these
that?
coins are weighted to be flipped anyway. Even
Yeah,
if you could use
sure.
No.
coins, I don't think these are like actual usable
Yeah.
coins.
No. So like you just create something that and give it away an entry promo. Just it is 2023 and you're
Yes.
living in fucking 1990. Like it is crazy that it's just not caught up with like what is mainstream and what's those things get asses in seats, and that's what you want. That's
Yeah.
like when I was like building my own card game, that was just like the motto: do what you have to do to get asses in seats, and it doesn't cost that much just to you get the art done, and there's something else because they can do extended art cards and they do it for Rush
They
Duel.
do it for
So
Rush Duel. Yeah.
you know that you can do it, but refuse to do it for regular Yu-Gi-Oh, and that
Yeah.
pisses me off.
That is I'm gonna be honest with you, Rush Duel's been out for a while, and I still don't think I get it. Like, does that make? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't.
No, I don't.
Every every so often, I'll see like a picture of like a Rush Duel product, and I just go, "What
Huh.
is like? What is this?" Like, I just don't know. And like, I guess it's probably just because it never had a release in North America. But it's like,
Uh-huh.
I don't. I just the only thing I ever hear about Rush Duel is like that picture of like Blackluster Soldier in like a tracksuit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm just like
Sure.
that. I'm just like that BLS card, and I go like, all right, like I guess, yeah. Where are we gonna get our top 8 BLS tracksuit promo for Yu-Gi-Oh? That'd be cool.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like so it's just so easy. It's something that people want. It's tangible. It's something that can be used. I mean, And you can do one for entry, then you can do one for top cut, and then you could even go
Yeah.
further and do one for
For the
winner,
winner.
like
Yeah.
for the winner. Instead of, if people really don't like the normal monster prize card, you just do an alternate art or extended art of like a popular card for that year,
Yeah.
and whatever.
And it's something where like somebody will say like, well, it's probably not that easy, and then my counterpoint will simply be every other game does it.
Game does it, yes.
So as much as
We've
I
been here.
hate to say
We're screaming
I
into
know.
the abyss.
I know.
It's
As
fine.
much as I hate to
We've
say
been here before. We've been here before. We'll be here again. It's all
Yeah.
that happens. It's,
I
Yeah,
know.
stay tuned for next time where we bitch about things that are
I
so easy
know.
to fix.
I know.
Uh,
I think it's like so I've talked about this before where I started playing the My Hero card game. I guess technically now it's called something else. I don't even want to get into it. It's a whole thing. But like they showed the promo, so they've the events are there are only a couple more events this year before that game's nationals, and they just showed the promos for that game's nationals, and there are like 10 of them. Like there are literally like 10 alt art promos for the nationals, and I'm just like, this is a lot for like one event, you know? Like and then actually, unfortunately, kind of disappointingly, I was looking at the pricing, and the pricing for winning nationals is actually just like a play set of like all of them, and I'm like, that's kind of anticlimactic, honestly, but you know, whatever. But that is something where I was like, maybe that was a bit excessive, like maybe that's too many, you know, like maybe that's like too many of them. But especially when your entire pricing is just alternate art cards, like that's maybe like a bit too far, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It is something like, yeah, does Pokemon still give you a card, a mechanically unique card for entering worlds? I guess Yu-Gi-Oh tried it one year with Get Your Game
does.
On.
Yeah, this year's was like Paradise Resort or
Yeah.
something. I'll try.
Yeah,
try
which
and
I
get it
guess in 2007 Yu-Gi-Oh tried that, and it was whatever. It was Get Your Game On. Like that's, you can look that up if you don't know what that is. It's kind of a funny card. It's not tournament legal, but yeah, I don't think that's a solution really, but I don't know. It is
Paradise
something interesting.
Resort is literally unplayable.
Yeah. Well, because it
there's a
has to be, right?
trainer
Because if it's
stadium.
playable, then
Well,
yeah.
I mean, nah, because they had what was that one card? Tropical Beach, tropical.
Yeah, and
Tropical
everybody
Beach.
hated it. I know what you're talking about. And
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
hated it. So that's what I'm saying is you
Yeah.
have to make it.
This was a trainer, and it the retreat cost of each Psyduck in play, both yours and your opponent's, is one less.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Is that this year's World Entry card?
Yeah,
That's
pretty
fun.
much.
Okay, so talking about the Pokemon Worlds cards,
Yeah.
something I think is really cool is
Mhm.
when you place at Worlds, like first, second, third, or whatever,
Mhm.
they give you a prize card, and the prize card is like a Pikachu that is called, like, I don't remember the exact name, but on it says like, you place second at the World Championship, and you get to come back next year for next World Championship. And I think that's really freaking cool that they do something like
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah,
I really
I like those. They're cool.
Yeah.
They're also like randomly like gold stamped as well. It's just neat, you know. It's just really
Yeah.
like the little touches. But that's not to say like, so I think the other step in like the right direction, but maybe it's also a step back. The Yu-Gi-Oh Worlds this year, they, you know how they normally have like the world celebration thing, and they give out like the envelopes and like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like I feel like generally, which is not to say like every store does it, but like a lot of this tournament pricing just tends to be not given out. And I think these envelopes hold a high enough value where maybe not diluting the amount in rotation and making it more exclusive is a little bit better. So far all we've seen is some Twitter giveaways for like allegedly like 5 of them. But then out of the 5,000 that are around, like a majority of them were given out at the World Championship. And I think that's like a little cooler, right? Like it's a throwback to the 2017 envelope, and like that's unique enough. Like obviously the public that randomly, ended up getting a ticket for the World Championship in Japan were able to get that envelope. So like there's still a good chunk around, and they're probably, just in the secondary market and nothing matters. But from like a player perspective, it feels a little more exclusive than like, oh, I got this Worlds envelope because I didn't do well enough at the World Championship. Like, like if you don't make top 4, you don't really get too much else.
But instead of coming home the next week and being like, oh, I got this Walls envelope, and everyone's like, yeah, we also got it at locals.
Yeah.
Haha. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
that
I
was
think
kind of
that's like
sick. Not gonna lie.
that's a step in the right direction, but at the same time, like getting rid of the World celebration thing also feels kind of iffy for a game that kind of struggles with OP initiatives. I think the World celebration was like a very cool thing, seeing camaraderie between players and stuff. But people took they took it in their own hands and made their own World celebrations. Like I've seen stores doing World celebrations for like the local players that went, and they'll have like this giant thing, and people are just like watching the stream. Even with time zones messing it up. I'm sure people in like East Coast North America were watching the people play in Japan, which is just like a crazy time difference. Tell them, Ryan.
Yeah, I was watching. So Jeff and I were at Gen Con, but at
Mhm.
the hotel I was watching, or not the Airbnb. I was watching some of the stream on
Yeah.
my phone at like 1 a.m. and like that was kind of fun. But
Mhm. I even called I even called Jeff. He was
He
asleep.
did. He did call. Yeah, Bohdan called me. He's like, I'm nervous. I need to talk to someone. And I'm like, bro, I'm asleep. Good luck. I hope you win.
The end. And
Oh
if you
man.
didn't go back to bed, maybe I would have won. Anyway,
Mhm.
no,
Yeah.
I was good after that. I laid on the floor for a bit, and then I was good. Pretty neat.
Okay. Okay. So
Next thing we
we
talk
talked about a lot more
is
than I when Bohdan stopped talking about his Worlds thing and we'd only been recording for 15 minutes, I was like, man, this might be so short. We have to fill time with something else. That we filled the time. So, all right, I don't even know how we talked about that for 35 minutes, but here we are. Okay, so let's talk last thing, and hopefully this will be quicker because I don't have that much to say about it. I topped a regional last week, haha, with Rescue Ace. I know
Wow,
that was the
Worlds
biggest plot twist that I did not play Vanquish Soul, but I played Rescue Ace. I will be honest, I did not know really what the cards did until like round 4. But I had a reasonable experience. I think I only had like one match where my opponent like was a little unpleasant, but like that happens, sometimes. Like it doesn't matter. Like I don't want to dwell on it. It's just like I had not played a regional in quite some time. After 2018, when I did the World's Points grind, I said I'll never enter regional again. And then I entered a regional last year, and after round 2, I just dropped and said I don't want to do this. This is awful. So I don't even know how I ended up at this regional, but I broke my promise never entering a regional again. And yeah, I think Rescue Ace, I played it because it was something I wanted to practice, in case I want to play it down the line when, what are they called? What are the Age of Overlord cards that support it? They're not Rescue Ace cards.
Like the Diabell whatever.
oh
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, that guy.
Diabell Star.
Yeah, I wanted to know how
Uh,
this deck worked in case I want to play it when those cards come out, and I think this deck is fine. Like it's pretty good actually. I was a little surprised how good I think the deck was. I thought I was really really tunneled, which I'm sure a lot of people are, on Turbulence sets 4 cards, and I literally was just like, the rest of this deck can be unplayable as long as it can get you to Turbulence, and Turbulence sets 4 and you win the game instantly. And that was really not the case. I actually feel like the rest of the deck just did a lot. Like I was shocked how, I think it was mainly just Preventer is a much better card than I thought, which obviously if you read that card, you'll probably be like, this is a strong card. And it is a strong card. I did not realize it was an absolutely insane, busted, broken card. I think that was where kind of my disconnect was, is like, I looked at it and was like, this is a good card I'll put in my deck. It did not occur to me that it was like an insane card. So a couple neat little tricks that I figure I would talk about that, I'm sure if you're very familiar with this deck, then nothing I say will be truly enlightening. I'm just going to give a couple of my thoughts based on what I learned as I played. And I said this at the event, and I'll say it now. If you came up to me at round 3 and showed me a video of me playing this deck in round 7, I would have said, I don't believe you. I don't know how to do that. So anyway, so I think the coolest interaction that I found that I really enjoyed is I was playing, again, I just really like this package in general. I played it in the first Vanquish Soul build I had, is I really, really like the Merrymaker, Sargass, Therian engine in a deck that can make a rank 4, which is you make Spriggan's Merrymaker, you put Gigantic Champion Sargass on top of it, and then you search Regulus. And then even if your deck plays 0 machines, you can attack with the Sargass, make Zeus, and then you have a 4-material Zeus, and then you Zeus them, and then Sargass is a machine, or maybe one of them is, maybe they're both machines actually. Zeus is definitely a machine. So even if I'm wrong about all of this, Zeus is eventually a machine that will end up in your graveyard, but I'm pretty sure Merrymaker is a machine too. So you detach Merrymaker, you Zeus them, and then you can summon a Regulus. So that's a really, really cool engine for any deck that can make a rank 4 going second. It's probably better in a deck that can support like Dark Ruler more easily. You Dark Ruler, you make a rank 4, you Sargass, search Regulus, attack, double Zeus them, summon Regulus, and you probably win the game. But this deck has more machine monsters, and more importantly, what I was talking about Preventer being a crazy, crazy card is Preventer triggers to summon a banished Rescue Ace monster no matter how it is sent to the graveyard. It just says if this card is sent to the graveyard, summon or banish Rescue Ace except for a level 8 monster. So that means if you summon Regulus by equipping it with your Preventer, when you use Regulus on your opponent's turn, that Preventer will go to the graveyard and it will trigger. So there were a couple times where you can't end with Hydrant face up on your field based on how your turn plays out, or you want to link it away for something. So you link it away, you banish it to summon Preventer, you do your whole combo, you search Regulus, then you equip Preventer with, you equip Regulus with Preventer, and then when you use Regulus to negate something, Hydrant comes out, and now all of your Rescue Ace cards have their bonus effect. And that was just something that added another little layer to the deck that I didn't think about previously, and really helps lock down some of those closer games. That's in a game where you can make the Merrymaker Sargass thing. I don't think that means you've resolved that combo and searched Regulus. I don't think that interaction is what's going to really be the difference between you winning and losing. I think it's the closer games where you just hard draw Regulus, where an interaction like that can really kind of flip the game in your favor. So that was definitely something cool that I was optimizing later on, is just making sure I always had more banished Rescue Aces to float back with Preventer, and then just had more ways to get Preventer on the field or set it up, or even just linking it away, but then setting the Reborn Rescue Ace spell with Turbulence, and then on your opponent's turn, just reborning it back so you would always have access to it. So, yeah, I think basically the short of it is I think this deck has a lot of really good tools, and it's not just Live or Die by Turbulence resolving. There were games my Turbulence got imperned and I still won, and there were games I got, actually every game I got evenly matched after resolving Turbulence, I still won. So I really think people are what's the word? I think they're like not correctly associating the actual strength of the deck. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, if you just negate Turbulence, you win. Oh, you just evenly them, you win. I think they have a lot of tools to, 1, prevent that from happening, and 2, to still play even if that does happen. So, and that will only be better going forward. Which, Jeff, if you know more about these cards, I don't know what the Age of Overlord cards do. That I vaguely know what they do. I know they're like one.
I mean, the Age of Overlord, yeah, it's literally just basically there's a spell that searches a monster, and then the monster searches another spell, which then like tributes her and summons like a level 1 fighter monster from your deck. So, yeah. Very. It's basically literally just 1 for 1.
But you can discard anything, right? It's 1 for 1, but you can discard a spell as well.
Yes, you can discard anything.
Yeah, that was super. Like, I didn't end up playing 1 for 1. I might put it in my deck going forward if I play this deck more, but there were a lot of hands where you just don't like. You play a lot of monsters, but it's like you also play like 20 spells and traps. So there are definitely times when just being able to discard a redundant spell or trap is more useful than having to discard a monster with 1/1, which 1/1 is obviously a broken cards, but making it even better by letting you discard anything is, nothing wrong with that. So I don't know. I do like this deck. I think if there's a list, I doubt this is a deck that will get hit, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm not really putting any thought into a potential list. I'm just gonna kind of let it happen. I don't think dwelling on it in the position we are now, I really don't think like thinking about it is helpful. I'm just gonna kind of let it happen if it happens. But
Yeah. Okay. So I guess outside of that, I think one thing I just want to touch on before we wrap things up is it is the weekend and there are lots of regionals going on, but I have some regional results from yesterday
okay.
for a couple of regionals that we could go over and talk about. And something I think is very interesting is the lack of cash, the lack of cashier in a lot of these top cuts. And I don't know how many. I doubt either of you have really gone to Yu-Gi-Oh locals, but almost everyone at my Yu-Gi-Oh locals, we get like 40 or 50 people, has just stopped playing cashier. They just refuse to play
Mm-hmm.
it. And I think that's what's going on outside of like a few people who are just trying to grind worlds points. If you're trying to grind world points, I'm pretty sure I would just probably play cashier. But yeah. So for one of these regionals, first place undefeated was Flunder, then Chimera, Manadium, Unchained Live Twin, Dragon Link, Kashtira, Unchained, and versus Soul Math Mech.
What? Oh,
Yeah,
they just play circular. Okay, I guess. Or they
yeah, it's
make.
probably
Okay, I was like, what?
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. um, then at this next regional, we have Pearly in first place, followed by Manadium, Dragon Link, Unchained, Rescue Ace, Unchained, Labyrinth, and Labyrinth. Again, here, so in the previous one there was one Kashtira, and this one there was no Kashtira.
Mine, there was, I think, only one Kashtira in top 8 of mine as well. There might have been 0. I know there was not more than one, though, but there might have been 0.
I don't know exactly the full top 8 for the Toronto regionals, but first and second. First was Little Ryan Yu with Labyrinth, of course, and second was Unchained. And then at another regional, first place was Chimera, followed by Rika, Marincess, Tearlament, Chimera, Dragons, and Kashtira. So it's kind of crazy. There are a lot of Chimera decks in this top cut.
Yeah.
Which originally I was like, wow, I'm very surprised at this because this deck cannot beat Kashtira. So if anyone just plays Kashtira, this deck can just not win. Which makes people believe that just no one is playing it because they just don't want to play it. But yeah, other outliers are, I mean, it's kind of well rounded in a lot of these places. A couple Rescue Ace, a couple. Actually was not a lot of Pearly, only like 2.
Yeah. I didn't play
Um,
against any at mine, and only one topped. But, like, I sided a lot for it and then didn't play against any. And it was like, I would look and I literally just didn't see any next to me ever. Like,
yeah. Outside of maybe people not liking the deck, again, this goes back to months ago where I said the deck is not forgiving. If you
yeah.
play your cards in the wrong order and you mess up, you will probably just lose. Like you can't like top deck your way out of a lot of situations because your cards are all required to be like multiple card. You need like multiple cards to like play your hand, right? Um, so I am not. I guess I am surprised to not see so much Pearly, but if you think about it more, I'm not surprised simply because of how of like it's more of a it's definitely more difficult
Well, I think the
to
main
play compared to
reason
some of the other ones.
is probably just like for how much it costs versus the effectiveness of the deck. Like
Hmm.
for a YCS, if you think a deck is the best deck and it costs more, you should probably just play it anyway. Like, and I think a lot of people will agree with that travel to these
Yeah.
events. For regional, if you think there are a bunch of decks that are roughly like pretty similar, a lot of people are probably just going to go, why would I buy this Pearly deck for $200 or $300 or whatever when I could just buy this deck of common Chimera cards? There's like one Ultra that's like $20, and the rest of it is I've had in my branded shoebox for a year, you know?
Yeah.
So like, you know, that's I feel like that could definitely be a factor of just like, or even just like the only cards you need. Like, I think it's more likely. So somebody probably had a bunch of branded cards because that was a structure deck, right? So like you just had the branded cards you play in this Chimera deck you just had because you bought 3 outbound structure decks when it came out, because everyone did that because it had actual good cards in it also. And then your friend opened a box of Duelist Nexus and pulled the Chimera Fusion monster, and like you have a deck now, you know. Which like for Pearly, it's like that's a lot more work. You have to go and find a pack that nobody opened when it came out, you know, or have had the deck since it came out, but less likely. So
Yeah, but I just hope isn't that people don't look at these results and think, "Wow, this deck is broken," and then invest money into it, and then a list comes and Kashtira isn't neutered, and then the deck is unplayable because you can still play
yeah,
Kashtira.
yeah.
So same thing with a couple of these other decks. Like, I mean, I think the Minidium deck is not good, but
I think a fly just flew on my microphone, and that was crazy. Sorry. I just like I heard a buzzing and I looked and that was insane. Okay. I wonder if that came up in the recording. I'm super curious. All right, sorry, keep going.
yeah, so the same with a lot of these decks. Like everyone just assumes like Kashira is going to get utterly destroyed, but if it doesn't, and you like invested, like I don't know, I'm pretty sure that like the Vanadium deck is pretty expensive. I think the Rescue Ace deck is like not cheap. Um,
It's pretty cheap.
Rescue
The
Ace
Rescue Ace
is
is
pretty
really
cheap.
cheap actually.
is
It's
it?
pretty cheap.
Yeah,
The only
Hydrant's
expensive
like
card is Hydrant.
Hydrant's barely over $20. Turbulence is $5, and all the rest of them are literally nothing. All the
Oh,
rest of them
okay.
are commons. Well, yeah, it's. I was shocked because I also played Rescue Ace because I borrowed someone's deck because and I was like, I didn't want to borrow like a super expensive deck, and then I looked and he was like, these like aren't even worth that much. I'm like, oh, can I just like borrow them? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And I just like still have them, and I'm just like, do you want these back? He's like, yeah, later. I'm like, all right. Like, I was like, cool. So yeah, they're literally not worth that much, which is crazy. Like, because Hydrant was really hyped up for a little while, and then in this is like I feel like never happened ever is like usually when these cards get hyped up, when the support actually comes out, they get even more expensive. And this one was like it got super hyped up. Hydrant, I want to say Hydrant was almost like $40 at one point. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it was like $40
it was almost
in
$40,
July.
yeah.
And then the support came out, and now it's like you can buy a set for like $25 each, like maybe like a little under 30, and it's like that's the only card in the deck that's worth anything, because the other cards are like you probably, and this is something that I don't know, this is not really the time or the place to go on this tangent, but I'm going to anyway because I'm thinking about it, is whenever somebody talks about like X deck is so expensive and they just start listing like generic extra deck cards, I just get so mad because I'm like, if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh, you must own those anyway. Like saying like Rescue Ace is expensive because access code Talker is $30 is like, you need that card for a bunch of different decks. You know what I mean? Or like Zeus is $20 and it's like you need that card no matter what. Like that's not a cost of entry for Rescue Ace. That's like, if you are playing Yu-Gi-Oh at an event, you should own a copy of Zeus, probably.
I mean, I feel the same about cards like Ash Blossom.
Yes,
like, I don't think
sure.
someone's like Ash Blossom was like, we'll say Ash Blossom was like when it was a $20 card at like a minimum or whatever. You're like, yeah, it's expensive to like build a deck, and they go, yeah, you need 3 Ash Blossom. I'm like, yes, but I'm guaranteeing 90% of people already have 3 Ash Blossom.
Yes, literally everybody reading this already has an Ash Blossom. Yes. Yeah. So as far as like the unique cards a Rescue Ace deck plays that you wouldn't already own, I don't think it's anything but Hydrant, honestly. Like all the extra deck cards too are like, it just plays all the generic ones. Like you might have to go out of your way to find like some weird bulk ones, but that's not really expensive. That's just like you order them on TCG Player for $1 and they'll show up in a week and like, you know, here you are. Yeah, I don't think anything else is.
Yeah, for some reason I thought
yeah.
Hydrant was still like $40. Now it's
No,
yeah,
it
it's
went
like
down a lot.
25. Yeah, so I was
Mhm.
like, you have to spend $120 on just 3 cards, and then you have
Yeah.
everything else. But yeah, I don't know. This is actually pretty affordable, and
Yep.
it's a good deck. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the better budget decks right now. Honestly, assuming you're not starting from absolute scratch and you have the other staples and whatever. Like, if you have Prosperities, like Prosperity is a $40 card, but you probably played that in every deck for the last year. So hopefully you own that card. But I don't know. Yeah, I think that
yeah,
covers my regional experience and my thoughts on Rescue Ace and all this stuff.
I think that covers basically everything we wanted to talk about
Yeah.
until
Do you have anything to add, Bohdan,
for
to any of
now.
this?
No,
All right.
no. I think TCG is pretty boring until Cash gets hit. Well, that's
Yeah.
just a ban list in general, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so we're about to hit the big stretch of events. There's what is it? There's Brazil, Vancouver, Cancun, and then Dortmund, all in a row with no breaks. I don't think, right? It's just 4 weeks in a row.
There's a week.
There might
There's
be
a
a
week
week
off.
break.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna look up 100% because
Yeah.
this can also translate to like when we think so I'm gonna hope that the team YCS in Brazil is September 2nd.
Okay.
Then we have YCS Vancouver September 9th,
Yeah.
and then Cancun September 16th, and
And
then
then
the
an
next
off
one
week.
after that is
Yeah.
October, and that's Indianapolis.
There's Dortmund is the 29th of September.
Oh, Dortmund, yeah, that's not
Or the
yeah,
30th, yeah.
yeah, the
So
30th,
we
yeah.
have an off week between Cancun and Dortmund, and then we have as of right now, a couple weeks off between Dortmund and Indianapolis.
So I am going to guess that what will happen will be the same thing that happened to us before our team YCS, where they will announce a forbidden list around the time of the team YCS to go in effect after the team YCS.
Sure.
So then Vancouver will be the first event to have a new forbidden list, but also Brazil should also be the first event where you have a new prize card as well.
Yes, it should
Hopefully.
be. Yeah. Which we haven't seen
if
it yet.
Isn't,
yeah.
If it isn't, well, like, yeah.
It would be the very first time they do that, where a new season doesn't have they use a prize card for a new season.
Yeah. Dual Link Dragon. Just kidding. That doesn't count.
Shut up.
Yeah.
So hopefully in the next week or two, they will reveal the next prize.
Yeah, literally, hopefully it's in a week. How crazy would it be, though, if they just hand it to the person that wins the event and just, like, don't say anything
and
it's just a new card?
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't show you the new top cut playmat at all because it's always the new prize card.
Yeah, that would be crazy,
just go
actually.
into it blind.
That would actually be insane. That's very funny.
Well, okay, that definitely wraps up to today's episode. Thank you all for listening.
And we will probably be back, hopefully, with a new list or after some events happen. So hopefully not too long, probably in maybe 2-3 weeks. So
we'll give you like a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all for listening. And then, I don't know, Jeff, do you have a last thing you wanted to say?
No, I was just say hopefully it doesn't have to be 3 weeks. Hopefully we get some cool information we can make a podcast about next week.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. So thank you all for listening.
we might have 10 information next week. Who knows?
Cool. All right. Anyway, okay, cut the feed. Anyway, no. We're not going to talk about it. Okay. Anyway, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.